motion in your steps.
Motivation in your heart.
Hello, and welcome to today's Motion and Motivation podcast.
Hey there. So you're ready to unlock some serious self-improvement power with Atomic Habits. Awesome. This book, it's not your average self-help fluff. It's like a practical guide to actually making those changes stick. And we're here to help you break it all down.
It's a fantastic choice. Seriously, James Clear has this knack for taking complex research on habits and making it, feel doable.
Right. Like he doesn't just tell you what to do, he explains the why behind it.
Exactly. And it's not just theory, it's backed by science, which makes it all the more powerful, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Like that whole plateau of latent potential thing he talks about. It's like you're putting in the work, but you don't see those instant results. And it can be super discouraging, right?
Oh, totally. It's like, hello, I'm working hard here.
Exactly. But Clear reminds us that it's those small, consistent actions, even when they seem insignificant, that really add up over time. It's like that analogy he uses, about heating an ice cube.
Oh, I love that analogy. It's so simple, yet so powerful, right?
Yeah.
Imagine you're slowly increasing the temperature of an ice cube from, say, 25 to 31 degrees. Nothing seems to be happening.
Boy, right, you think something's got to change.
Exactly. But then, boom, you hit that critical threshold, 32 degrees, and suddenly the entire structure transforms into water.
Wow. It's like magic.
It is.
Yeah.
And Clear says it's the same with building habits.
So those early efforts, even if we don't see immediate results, they're not for nothing. They're actually laying the groundwork for a major breakthrough.
Exactly. And, there's actually research to back this up. One study found that people who decided when and where they'd exercise were way, way more likely to stick with it.
It's like having a game plan makes all the difference.
Totally. Clear calls this making implementation intentions. Basically, it's about getting super specific with your habits. So instead of just saying, oh, I want to exercise more, you say, okay, I'm going for a run every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 a.m. in the park.
Having that concrete plan, that really changes things, huh?
Big time. And, this ties into another big idea from Atomic Habits. It's not just about doing things differently. It's about becoming someone new.
It's like you're not just checking off tasks, you're building an identity.
Exactly. Each action, it's like a vote for the kind of person you want to be.
Okay, that's powerful. And you know what? It makes me think about the whole habit loop Clear talks about. Cues, cravings, responses, rewards.
Right, like a cycle, always in motion.
Exactly. And speaking of cycles, this one coffee shop always seems to suck me into a bad one.
Oh, tell me you don't have a coffee shop story. Everyone's got one.
I know, right? Okay, so every time, and I mean every time I walk past this specific coffee shop.
Uh-oh. That sounds dangerous.
It is. I get this overwhelming craving for a cookie, and it doesn't even matter if I'm full or not. It's like automatic. Like my brain sees the shop and bam, cookie time.
It's like you're on autopilot.
Yeah.
But, that's a perfect example of a cue triggering a craving, and it shows just how much, even without realizing it, our environment shapes our habits.
It's a little scary how much power our surroundings have over us, isn't it?
It is. But just like we can be, unconsciously influenced by our environment, we can consciously design it for success, too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, instead of letting our environment control us, we can flip the script and use it to our advantage. Right?
Totally. And Clear gives this really interesting example. Remember those fly in the urinal stickers?
Wait, the ones they put in airports to improve aim?
Exactly. They found that just by making the target more obvious, they drastically reduced, spillage.
Oh, wow. Small change, big impact.
Right. It's all about those subtle nudges. And, it's like, just like those stickers, we can set up our own little cues in our environment to steer ourselves towards better choices.
So it's about being intentional with our surroundings, right? Because even small changes can make a difference.
Absolutely. Claire talks about these Japanese factories, right?
Yeah.
And how they're designed to, eliminate any wasted time or movement. And by optimizing their work environment, they're able to boost both efficiency and quality. And the cool thing is, we can apply those same principles to our own lives.
So if our environment is like our first line of defense, what about the actual habits themselves? Like, how do we make those good habits irresistible, especially when procrastination tries to take over? Well, Clear has this great strategy. He calls it the 2-minute rule. Have you heard of this?
Oh, yeah, the 2-minute rule. It's so simple, but so smart, right?
It is. Because let's be real, we've all been there, right? We set these big, ambitious goals for ourselves.
And then?
And then life happens. We get overwhelmed, we procrastinate.
We're human. It happens to the best of us.
Exactly. But this 2-minute rule, it kind of takes the pressure off. Like, instead of trying to write a whole novel, Clear's like, just commit to writing for 2 minutes a day.
Right. Make it so easy you almost can't say no.
Exactly. It's like tricking your brain into taking that first step. And you know what? Often, once you start, you get into a groove and just keep going.
Momentum is a powerful thing.
It is. And you know what else I love about Clear? He uses the funniest examples. Like, he even uses flossing as an example with this rule.
Oh yeah, the flossing example, that's a classic.
Right. He talks about how even just flossing one tooth.
One tooth.
I know, it sounds silly, but he's like, even that is a step in the right direction. It just cracked me up when I read that.
It's true though. It's all about those small wins.
Exactly. And once you've kind of mastered those 2-minute habits, Clear's like, okay, let's kick it up a notch. Let's automate.
Ah yes, automation. It's like a superpower for building good habits.
Right. Because it's not just about willpower, it's about setting yourself up for
Yes,
success.
exactly. And it can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be. Think about it. Automatic savings plans, meal prep services, even just pre-selecting a healthier option at a restaurant the night before.
So you don't have to think about it in the moment.
Exactly. You're basically making those good choices the default.
I love that. So instead of relying on willpower alone, which, let's face it, can be pretty flimsy sometimes.
Oh, tell me about it. Willpower's not always reliable, that's for sure.
That's like, why make it harder on ourselves, right?
Right. And clear contrasts this idea of automating good habits with the idea of making bad habits difficult.
Okay, that makes sense. Make good habits easy, bad habits hard. Got it.
Exactly. And he tells this great story about Victor Hugo, the famous French writer.
I do. What did he do?
So apparently, when Hugo had a writing deadline, he would have his assistant lock away all of his clothes.
All of them, like everything.
Well, almost everything. He would keep out like one big shawl to wear.
A shawl. That's hilarious.
Right. But his logic was if he couldn't leave the house and he couldn't even really get dressed.
He had no choice but to write.
Exactly. It's kind of extreme, but it shows how powerful it can be to really shape our environment.
I love it. It's like those little hacks, those little tweaks we can make to our surroundings to kind of nudge ourselves in the right direction.
Exactly. And it's not just about removing temptations. It's also about making those good habits as easy and appealing as possible.
Right. Make it a no-brainer.
Exactly. And speaking of staying on track, Clear talks a lot about the power of tracking your progress.
Oh, yeah. Visual feedback can be super motivating, can it?
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Remember that example Clear gives about the salesman who used paper clips?
Mm-hmm. Tell me. That's the kind of stuff I live for.
So this salesman, he had these 2 jars on his desk, right?
Okay.
And every time he made a sales call, he'd move a paperclip from one jar to the other. Simple as that.
So simple, but I bet it was effective.
It totally was.
Yeah.
It gave him this visual representation of his progress. And it's something we can all do no matter what habit we're trying to build.
It's like giving yourself that little pat on the back, that little reminder of how far you've come.
Exactly. It's a way of celebrating those small wins, which are so important. But it's not just about external rewards. Tracking our habits also provides this sense of satisfaction that we're becoming the person we want to be.
It's like it aligns our actions with our desired identity, right?
Exactly. And that brings us back to the idea of identity-based habits that we talked about earlier.
It all connects, doesn't it?
It does. But as important as tracking is, Clear also cautions against becoming overly fixated on the numbers. It's not just about hitting a specific target.
It's about the journey, right? The process of continuous improvement.
Exactly. It's about those small, incremental improvements over time. You get a little bit better each day.
So it's like find that balance, right? Track your progress, but don't get so caught up in the outcome that you forget to enjoy the process.
Exactly. Which reminds me, Clear also talks about the importance of finding your game.
Finding your game. What does he mean by that?
So finding your game is about identifying those activities and habits that really align with your strengths, the things that come naturally to you.
Oh, like finding your groove.
Exactly. It's about understanding your unique talents, your natural inclinations, and then building habits around those things.
Because when you're doing something you're good at, something you enjoy, it doesn't feel like work, right?
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where passion and skill intersect.
But even when we do find our game, let's be real, staying motivated all the time, that's not always easy.
It's not. And you know what? Clear is very honest about that. He talks about how even professionals, people at the top of their game, they have days when they don't feel like showing up.
Really? Even those people?
Even them. They still struggle with motivation sometimes. But the difference is they've cultivated the discipline to show up, even when it's hard, even when they don't feel like it.
So it's like discipline over motivation.
In a way, yeah, because motivation comes and goes, but discipline, that's what keeps you going.
So how do we build that kind of discipline? I'm all ears.
Well, Clear talks about this concept called the Goldilocks rule.
Like the fairy tale.
Exactly. Remember how Goldilocks wanted everything to be just right?
Not too hot, not too cold.
Exactly. So the Goldilocks rule for habits is about finding that sweet spot where you're challenged just enough to stay engaged, but not so much that you get overwhelmed.
So it's like finding that balance between pushing yourself and not setting the bar so high that you set yourself up for failure.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we all have different limits and finding what works best for us.
And that probably takes some self-awareness, right? Like really paying attention to how you feel when you're taking on new challenges.
Absolutely. You have to be in tune with your own rhythms and energy levels. But even when we find that sweet spot, even when we're being mindful of our limits, there will still be times when we face setbacks. And that's where reflection comes in.
Reflection. Okay, so like taking the time to hit pause and really assess how things are going.
Exactly. And Clear suggests thinking of it like reviewing game tape.
Like athletes do.
Exactly. Athletes, they watch recordings of their games to analyze their performance, right?
Yeah,
They look for areas where they can improve.
makes sense.
And we can apply that same principle to our habits.
So it's like we're not just mindlessly going through the motions, we're actually paying attention to what's working, what's not working, and making adjustments as we go.
Precisely. Regular reflection helps us to fine-tune our approach and make sure we're headed in the right direction.
It's amazing how it all ties together, isn't it? From understanding those cues and cravings to like actually designing our environment to work for us, not against us. It's like Atomic Habits gives us the blueprint, and then we get to, build the house.
Exactly. It's not just a one-size-fits-all approach.
That's
It's
it.
about taking these principles and figuring out what works best for you.
Like we're all working with different blueprints, different terrain.
Exactly. We all have our own unique styles, preferences, goals.
And that's where maybe like mindfulness comes in. Instead of just blindly following habits, we can bring more awareness to them. Like really pay attention to how they make us feel and adjust as needed.
Exactly. It's about tuning in to those subtle shifts that happen as we try to change our behavior.
Because it's not just about what we do, it's also about how we do it, right?
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
about approaching those everyday actions with intention.
Wow. This deep dive has been like seriously eye-opening. We've covered so much: the power of those tiny gains, the importance of finding your tribe, that awesome 2-minute rule, automating our habits. So much good stuff.
It's been great exploring these ideas with you. This book, it really gives you a solid framework for understanding and actually shaping your own behavior. It's empowering, when you say.
Totally. It's like we actually have more control than we think we do when it comes to creating the life we want.
Exactly. And remember, it's a journey, not a race, right? Be kind to yourself, celebrate those small victories, and just keep showing up.
Love that. Small steps, big changes. Well, that's a wrap on this deep dive into Atomic Habits. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation and feel inspired to put some of these powerful principles into action. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep those good habits rolling.